who is ultimately responsible for trying to replace the word republic with the word democracy when describing our style of government? Does that make sense?
Well, that's a very good question. Um, we are, in fact, a constitutional republic. We are, in fact, the oldest constitutional republic in the history of the world, the United States. Democracy is essentially mob rule. A democracy is where, yes, the people have a say, the people have a vote, but it's a popularity contest. Where in a constitutional republic, everyone, whether you win, you lose, whether you vote or you don't, if you're a citizen, you are protected by the same laws that protect everyone. There is no mob rule. There are checks and balances ensuring that the government doesn't become all-powerful or tyrannical. In a democracy, that is not the case. Every single democracy eventually falls into socialism. And then shortly after socialism falls into communism. And the movement towards a democracy is a movement that is usually called progressive. And if you were to look up and research Marxism with progressivism, they are one and the same. It's just they don't call it Marxism because we all know what that shit means. They call it progressivism. And I want to remind you that the Democrats now see themselves as progressives. And I want to remind you that Abraham Lincoln was not a progressive. He was not a Democrat. He freed the slaves. He ended slavery as a Republican. In fact, he founded the Republican Party. I also want you to know that at the founding of the nation, Georgia and South Carolina refused to end slavery. They said that they would leave as separate colonies, and therefore the United States would never happen. They absolutely fought tooth and nail to retain slavery. The Civil War was inevitable because the South, as it was expanding to the West, wanted to extend slavery. That wasn't going to be allowed to happen. It's interesting that the progressives talk about inclusion and all of this when in fact they are quite the opposite. And if any of you are absolutely really interested in any of this, in knowing and seeing for yourself the doublethink that we have all just experienced in this last election, there is a movie, you may be able to get it online, called Hillary's America by Dinesh D'Souza. Couldn't recommend it highly enough. It's all there for you to see. You know, it's interesting that they're referring to Donald Trump and others as Klansmen. The Klansmen were always Democrats. They were always Democrats. They were not Republicans, they were Democrats. It's hysterical. Everything they accuse everyone else of being, they in fact themselves are. So, if you want to know, there it is. So let's go to another question. I probably went on too long with that, ladies and gentlemen, but for those of you who know me, I love history. I find it absolutely fascinating. And America has made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. And we've done some horrible things, especially those to not only the African Americans, but to the Native Americans. And those will need to be corrected. But America's also done a great deal of good. And I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Just not going to do it.